Welcome, friends. I am terribly delighted to have you join me this day. Today I would like to discuss the Tales of the Shire. It is a video game that was developed in New Zealand. Now, this topic is interesting to me because the game launched with some interesting flaws, and the development of the title is quite interesting. It is something that many people may have the opportunity to learn from, and so I would like to discuss that with you today. Now, I am aware that there are those of you who would make mockery of this title and the people who have developed this title. I personally have no interest in making a mockery of insulting the people who worked on this title, and so I will personally refrain from that, but you certainly may do whatever you'd like. I cannot tell you to not make fun of this game nor the people who developed it. I am not your real father, so it would fall upon deaf ears were I to say, let's just discuss the game in a neutral and educational manner. Now, what I find interesting is that the game has scaled itself in a way that is optimized but not entirely necessary, in that there are many aspects that would have allowed the game to run appropriately on older hardware, about 15 to 20. I'm terribly sorry, I'm feeling a bit faint. I don't understand why I feel so heavy. This is but a mere trinket that I am holding on to for a dear old friend. But he did leave me with a warning to not put on the ring. But it is a pretty thing, is it not? It shimmers in a way that it catches the morning light in a way that no other trinket has before, and I should return the trinket later this evening, but why shouldn't I keep it? "'Tis a petty, pretty thing. I understand not why it should not belong to me, such a beautiful, simple thing. Why shouldn't I keep it? It's mine. It belongs to me." Probably best I set it down. I set the ring down and... Did my accent just change? Okay, so my accent changed after I put the ring down. Okay, so that was weird. I think I'm just going to leave the ring off then. I don't know why I sounded so different. So let's go ahead and take a look at Tales of the Shire, which I think is quite interesting. And again, I want to approach this in a way where you can learn from it and we can discuss and we can see basically why the game looks so weird. Why does the game look like that? And I want to explain the technical aspects from a game development standpoint. So we're going to boot up the trailer here. We're going to look at two sources of footage. We will look at the trailer, and then we will look at gameplay footage from Nintendo Life's review. I will put a link to both of these videos in the description, so you may view those at your leisure. Now, to start with, actually, the word tobacco is never used in Middle-earth. This should say pipeweed. Tolkien would not have used a New World word like tobacco, so actually there. Now, what's interesting, I done research into this game. The developer interviews indicate that this was the team's first game. The interviewee indicated that the development team was comprised of talented, passionate people who love Lord of the Rings, who really care about Lord of the Rings, but they had not made a game before, despite the fact that they were passionate and talented, as according to the interview. The interviewee indicated that this development team had all the support that they needed. They were able to, any help that they asked for, they said they got. And they were quite proud of that, and they claimed that they had ample funding from the New Zealand government. So this is not a matter of a lack of support and a lack of funding and a lack of time, because it did not sound like they were pressed for time on this as well. It sounded like they had a comfortable environment to work with, and basically the game turned out this way because this was their first game. And I want to show the points that explain how this team was just inexperienced when it came to creating a game. Again, I am not here to insult or belittle or attack anyone. I'm just here to point out some technical aspects of the game so that other developers, especially if you are early on in your development journey, that you may learn from that. Again, this is constructive and educational. There is meant to be no cynicism or insult here. So this game was made in Unreal for many platforms, including mobile, and that is one of the bigger problems here, is that the scope for this project when it comes to targeting platforms is a bit too big. I would say either just focus on mobile and don't worry about the dedicated game platforms, or forget mobile, because creating this game to run on mobile, they have to make sure this game runs on a wide range of devices, especially when it comes to Android. Many devices are quite weak because they're lower budget, and they tried to make this game run across a wide range of devices, and that really is one of the reasons why the game ended up this way, due to the decisions the development team had to make. They had to make this game work on weak hardware, which makes it look really bad on platforms like PC, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, wherever this thing launches on. So something I want to explain, which is very important, probably the most important thing that I will explain here, is that the characters, the character models, the animals are Vertex Lit. Now, what is a vertex? If you've ever done a connect the dots drawing, if you've got those little coloring books and you connect the dots 1, 2, 3, 4, you draw a line there. One of those dots is a vertex, and a 3D model is comprised of many, many vertices. 3 vertices, 1, 2, 3, would make a triangle or a polygon. Many polygons come together and they comprise a 3D model. When a 3D model is vertex lit, it means that the lighting is calculated for one of those vertices, a vertex, one of the points. So this means that basically your triangle is what is receiving lighting. It's calculating lighting. This is what we see on platforms like the Sega Saturn, PlayStation, 32X, N64, and PlayStation 2, GameCube. These used Vertex Lit shaders, and a shader is basically a part of the game that gives the game engine instructions on how a 3D model or how a piece of geometry in the game should be rendered. How should it look? Should it be complex? Should it be simple? In general, shaders that are complex have a significant negative performance on the frame rate. So having a 3D model that is vertex lit is actually quite easy on the frame rate. It has a low rendering cost, and I don't mean cost in terms of money, I mean cost in terms of the impact it has on the frame rate. So stronger hardware has a higher budget when it comes to rendering. For example, the Switch has a low budget, so when there are complex things on screen, the frame rate drops. The PlayStation 5 has a very high rendering budget, so that is able to render many things that are complex that do not have a significant negative impact on the frame rate. So the characters in this are vertex lit, which basically means this is what a PlayStation 1 game would look like. The benefits to vertex lit is that they are easy to render. They have a very low rendering cost, so they don't impact the frame rate very significantly. The negatives are that vertex lit geometry does not receive shadows. So when a character goes into a part of the scene, for example, under a tree, they will not have shadows cast on them. This looks unappealing and it's uncanny to our eyes because we expect a 3D model to receive shadows. At this point, here in the video footage at night, we can see that light sources, these are point light sources, these are very simple, easy to render. These point light sources do not cast shadows, so you can see as the character traverses under the light, there are no shadows being cast. If you look at the geometry around, like the fence, no shadow is being cast. This is what makes the game looks so cheap. It's what makes the game look basic, and people say that the game looks bad, it looks incompetent. It's primarily because of this, because the only light source that is casting light would be the primary light source, either the sun or the moon. No other light sources are able to cast shadows, which gives the game a very primitive, a very cheap feeling. And I'm not saying that as an insult. This is just an explanation of the end result of the decisions. Now, the reason they would have done this is for performance considerations, because on weaker Android hardware, they would be able to render a scene like this if there were more light sources that were able to cast shadows, if the character models were receiving shadow calculations. That would have some performance costs, but here's the thing. That would have been a big deal about 10 years ago. It is not 10 years ago. The hardware that we have these days can handle all of that quite easily. And so I'll come back to this point again later on, but the entirety of this game shows me that there's a lack of understanding when it comes to game development, game optimization, and a lack of basic understanding of games in general when it comes to creating them and making them function, because these are optimizations that were not necessary. This really would not have had a significant impact. So we can see that characters can cast shadows, but what is extremely unappealing, and something I've noticed from the earliest trailers, is that the eyelashes are unlit black. Unlit shaders means that they do not receive any light at all, no matter how much light is projected onto that. They remain pitch black. They are always the darkest thing in the scene, and is extremely off-putting to see that there is this huge black circle around the character's eyes. They basically look like Gaara from Naruto. These black eyelashes, I don't understand the artistic choice here. To me, it's extremely unpleasant, and I'm not saying this to be mean or to attack. As an artist, this is what I would describe as extremely unappealing. I would like to know and understand the reasoning behind this artistic choice, because this is a choice. There's no reason for these eyelashes to be unlit. They could have received lighting in vertex lighting like the rest of the model, and it would have looked significantly better. So I don't understand why they've done this. It's really unappealing. There is significant pop-in. Pop-in means that as the in-game camera gets closer to an in-game object, a piece of geometry, the object is not being rendered when it is beyond a certain distance, and then when it comes within a certain minimum distance, it is suddenly rendered. Generally, games do this because rendering something on screen has a performance cost, so you don't want to draw it if it's too far away. Otherwise, if you have so many things being rendered on screen, it has significant performance cost. This is elementary. Everyone should know this if you make games in any way in 3D. This is so very basic. The problem is that you have to understand why you need to do that, and you understand when you don't need to do that. So this shows that the developers of this had a very elementary understanding of this concept, but it's only surface level and superficial. They do not understand this concept on a deeper level in any meaningful way, because the way that this game implements pop-in is not necessary. If we look at all of the geometry in the game, they are low poly count. The higher number of polygons you have in your 3D model, the higher the rendering cost. But all of the 3D models in this game are extremely low poly count, which means that there actually is no benefit to culling these objects. Having them pop in basically makes the game look unappealing. It looks ugly, outdated, and basic for no reason. They could have kept rendering these objects at distance, and it would not have negatively impacted the frame rate, because the objects themselves are so simple to render. They have such low rendering costs. So they've basically cut off their nose to spider face, which is an old saying. It basically means they've wasted their time. They shot themselves in the foot. There was really no reason for them to do that. And it's frustrating to see technical decisions made like this, because to me it tells me the developers don't have a deeper understanding of what they've done. And I hope these developers are able to learn from this and improve and to keep making games and to get better and better. There's extremely short rendering distance for grass and flowers, and that is it's unappealing to me. It's very immersion breaking to see things continually popping in and out. To me, it shows that they believe that it's expensive for them to render their foliage. There are transparent pixels as part of that geometry, which would make it more expensive to render. So what I've noticed is all the foliage here, the grass, the trees, they all have this blobby look, a blobby disconnected look, and that occurs because the textures that are defining what these pieces of geometry should look like are very low resolution, and the game is basically just interpolating that and trying to fill in the space with pixels so it doesn't look like a horrible 2D, Minecraft level of density. And I'm not saying Minecraft is bad. I'm saying Minecraft uses a low pixel density aesthetic on purpose because that is the aesthetic style and it looks good. So you want to avoid that in this situation, which is why it's low resolution blobby thing here. So the depth of field is in effect where the background blurs out a little bit and the foreground stays in focus. Now on most platforms this is not a terrible issue, but on the Switch and especially on weaker Android hardware, the depth of field is a post-processing screen effect which allows the background elements in the scene to be blurred out. Generally it would hide a lack of detail while the foreground remains in focus, and this generally gives games a modern feeling, but unfortunately in this case the way they have implemented depth of field means that the performance overall is significantly negatively impacted, which means the frame rate is lower. Now there are ways to lower the internal rendering resolution when it comes to the depth of field, which would have made it more optimized and allowed. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was doing. I'll just go ahead and set that down. So something I noticed about the character model animations is that they are heavily compressed in this. They probably did this thinking that the developers probably heavily compressed the character model animations, thinking that it would improve performance, because I can see they're struggling with performance here. But doing that, again, does not actually help. Compressing the character model animation only cuts down on storage space. But when you heavily compress the character animation data, you can see that the legs wobble, the feet wobble, and they don't look like they are connected to the ground. Now, this is fine if the camera stays far away from the character. If the camera sits high up and you don't get close, it's fine to heavily compress the animation data like this. But because the camera gets closer, you can see, because the animation data is compressed, it means that there's less accuracy. So now the feet wobble and they don't look like they're connected to the ground at all. And this looks so very, very, it's immersion breaking. And again, it makes it look like a PlayStation 1 game. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I'm not, insulting, or this is just a basic descriptor of what the end result is here of these decisions. So overall, the visual aesthetic and the graphical implementation of this game, and I just want to be very clear here, I am not saying this to be mean or insulting, but were I to give a performance review for a colleague working on a project like this, The overall visual aesthetic and graphical implementation displays and exhibits a total lack of understanding of visual expression in a real-time environment using a game engine. The developers with this game have shown that they genuinely do not have a deeper understanding of how to use engine tools to express a sense of lighting and shadow. If you, say for example, take a look at a game like anything in the Xenoblade trilogy, not trilogy, the Xenoblade series, that shows what developers look like when they understand how to express a concept, a scene, a character. If you look at Retro, who make Metroid games, they understand how to use engine tools to express an idea, a concept, to show lighting, shadow, form, shape, composition. So with Tales of the Shire, what we see is a complete and utter lack of understanding of the development tools and how to visually express a concept using a game engine in real time. Maybe these people are talented in other areas when it comes to art or, you know, Lord of the Rings type things. I wish these developers all the best. I hope they keep learning. I hope they keep improving and they get to do more. And I don't want to shoot anyone down. I don't want to say stop making video games, boo, hiss to you. I don't want to say that. I want to say learn everything that you can, learn from your mistakes, keep improving, and push your abilities and your skills and your understanding as far as they can go and become the very best that you can become. Everyone starts somewhere. No one starts at the very top. No one starts at the very pinnacle of their ability, of their skill, of their understanding. But it is important to understand when you've done something poorly, when you've done something that lacks a display of deeper understanding. And I'm hoping other people are able to learn from this. So to summarize, there's just so many unnecessary optimizations. Things here are low poly count for no reason. There's a low poly count for everything. The textures are low resolution for no reason. The character models use Vertex Lit, which generally would be an optimization, but in this case, it looks so terrible, and you could have used pixel-based shader. And a pixel-based shader calculates lighting based on each individual pixel on screen, and that means characters are able to receive shadows. The pop-in for environmental objects, like even things like lamps and furniture, not just the foliage, that sort of pop-in is not necessary because these objects on screen have such low rendering costs. Here, you know, by taking a look at this, I can tell that basically one of the most expensive things to render in this scene are the effects of the chimney smoke. Transparent and semi-transparent pixels like that in general are one of the more expensive things to render, especially on the Switch. This game probably most likely has a poor frame rate. It's most likely due to the CPU. Probably there's heavy usage. I see NPCs walking around. There's most likely AI physics calculations when it comes to navigating the environments. That's probably where a lot of the frame rate is dropping here, where a lot of the rendering, it's probably bottlenecked by CPU instead of GPU. But there's so many things that would have been significantly better if this game was created in Unity. Unity is more lightweight than Unreal, and Unity would have been able to create a game like this and run at a better frame rate. It would have been easier to optimize based on my experience with both of those. Unreal is just very heavy, especially on lower end hardware. Unity tends to be significantly more lightweight when it comes to older hardware, weaker hardware. So this is a situation where the developers did not understand that. Your developers need to know you need to have a deeper understanding of the games industry, the development tools, the frameworks, the engines that are available to you, different approaches, what is necessary, what isn't necessary, what you're wasting your time on. This development team needed members who had a deeper understanding and had significant experience in game development, because the interviews with this team, they were kind of proud that they had never made a game before, and they're saying this is our first one, and I wish them all the best. Again, I hope they learn from this, they keep improving, they push their skills higher and higher and higher, and keep making something cool for other people. Thank you very much for enjoying this video, for watching. I hope, if you're into game development, I hope this has been helpful to you. And again, I'm not here to insult or attack the game or the people who made it. I wish people all the best, and I just hope that people are able to come away from this video with it's fun to understand things on a deeper level, to really get inside something and to just sort of feel it inside of you, and to be entirely wrapped in the existence of something so small, yet so all-encompassing and overwhelming. It should belong to me. It's mine. My precious